boy, is it hard coming back after, I don't know, I guess another week where I really wasn't playing much at all. Due to the heat more than anything else. But yeah. Okay. Now, I'm looking at a situation with these leaders down here and the concept of, hey, what would happen if I lose cannon on them? Because getting orders down there is so fucking hard. And I've been rolling. And I'm kind of unimpressed, right? Under the old system, a loose cannon for somebody like this would mean, hey, maybe I'd have to attack, and the defender would get reasonable fire coming back at me. Here, a loose cannon attack means almost nothing. Again, because it doesn't require you to do close combat or anything like that. What it would have required under the old system was move into firing range and exchange some shots. Here, there is no firing range, there is no exchanging shots. If I do that, I'm not going to take a hell of a lot of damage, and, you know, if it's going to get ugly, I could do an emergency core withdrawal right out, the turn after. Because that's voluntary. So it's like, that part of the loose cannon is really not too big a deal. What's the other part? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'd withdraw down here somewhere, or, one turn's movement to someplace stupider. It's not going to do much because these pieces are so far out of command. It's just really a question of, are they going to get to do anything at all in terms of, will they get their command? The loose cannon itself is not very risky. And again, the reason is that all of the fire combat has been shifted into that close combat. And I don't feel like it would be reasonable to require a more vigorous following of the orders than I would require for orders you wrote yourself. And since the loose cannon's only one turn, it really doesn't do a hell of a lot. It never was huge, but it's gotten weakened as a disincentive. And I happened to get one. First roll out of the box was like a 13. Anyway, trying to see what else I have to cope with. I have some core attack failure checks and stuff like that to do. Messy orders don't help much. In this case, I was looking at the 1L, which appears to have current orders, but it also appears to have failed its orders earlier. I didn't mark that. I should have an X there, because I just looked and I'm like, yeah, this is a rect column. I think it probably failed. I'm not sure. 3 has also failed. See, the problem is I have to look to see what is still active, and that works my way up. Okay, so the Army, I think, made it. So let me X that so that I don't redo that. I think the C Corps orders are still active, so I have to check those. The Guard is still active. The right appears to still be active, and it hasn't gotten smashed completely. Well, so the right's interesting because it has an infantry and a cavalry component, and they each take their own core attack failures, I guess. No. They make one combined core attack failure. They are a column of 2 divisions, is, I think, how it's to be dealt with the cav and infantry handled separately. So I have one for them. And there ain't a hell of a lot else that's operating. Problem with, you know, I mean, I'm trying to capture the, hey, I've been away for too long. Bagration's counter here was flipped over to its replacement side. I don't remember him dying, and I don't have him marked off here, so I tend to mark them off when there's an injury. As you see, I got a couple of those who are injured. But yeah, that would affect him, so he'd be 2 divisions out of 2 wrecked instead of 1. In addition to a good leader being out of the way. Yeah. Pull this back so I can recover it. I didn't want to take opportunity fire, so I launched a close combat against one of the artillery. Okay, fine. Forgot to shoot. I got to take care of that. He may not be there. And then I did a cav charge against this other one, which, yeah, that wasn't pleasant. The canister ripped me into a rout. So this guy had to move into that hex to cut that gun off so that it wouldn't get opportunity fire at the cav that was attacking. I turned out to roll boxcars on that, which means there was no damage. So the cav charge would have been reasonable. Otherwise, I screwed up by not taking my opportunity fire when I was supposed to, and would have had to maybe unwind things or whatever. But yeah, I lost three horses, and the unit's almost wrecked, and it's routed now. The different little movements and all the moving pieces in this system. Damn, is it hard to get back into. Taking care of the guard on the right. Moved in with another assault here. Now I'm looking at the center, whose orders look suicidal to me. They really do. I think that the coalition should have just banked that they got the hill and said, yeah, that's good enough. You want to come after me? Come on. And this is the real problem, is that for the coalition to take the bait and make the attack in any case, I think is just horrible. It looked like things were an advantage. It looked like I had weakened some units. When I wrote the orders, I'm going to continue on through with them because I have not reached, you know, the suicidal fire that'll allow me to make the withdrawal. But, you know, I've taken some shots, and it's kind of like, well, I'm not really ready to go forward anymore. And then there's the danger that I have to attack across a stream in a couple of places, which is just hellish, because that will cause a shaken result going in, just to begin with. I missed the story so far, which I intend to give at the beginning of each of these. Yeah, so what's happened is that the French, first of all, the coalition orders included coming in from here, which caused huge delays on the first turn being able to deploy properly. I had attack orders to begin with, taking up position up here, but also swinging up and starting an attack on the first day. But that never materialized because of the lateness of the arrival of those units. The French did what I considered the nightmare scenario for the coalition, which is they went up and attacked the coalition while it was forming up on the heights. Well, that didn't work out so well for the French. Attacking's hard in this game, and you take casualties when you're facing an enemy defensive position. After that, the next day, the coalition was backed down here to Krasnowitz and kind of launched an attack with the stuff from the Kirchfeld and whatever coming across overnight, and the French also pulling back, pulling over because this became unimportant there's no terrain factors in this scenario. And they got driven back pretty badly. And it looked like, hey, the coalition's doing great stuff. Well, the coalition continued its attacks, but they got repulsed over here in kind of mid-morning period, and things aren't going that great here. And now they're set up for what looks like a doomed attack. The first column here of the left had also gotten repulsed, although they drove. So a couple of French corps have been driven back. Soul's 4th, I think, has been flung back quite a bit. They were the ones who were occupying up here. The 1st Corps, which was supposed to provide, the additional realm of defense, also got flung back. You can kind of see, if you look, 1st Corps, it's got at least one beaten up division. Davout's 4th Corps is relatively beaten. They're gotten some recovery in. Lannes' 5th Corps, which I believe is holding over here, is not in great shape either. So, the French are taking their losses, and if we look at the overall losses at this point, not at the beginning of the turn, because the Russians have taken several, we're looking at 70 to 77, which means, this is essentially a draw in terms of losses and probably in terms of wrecked units, etc. So the coalition's doing much better than they did historically. However, it looks like they're about to slit their wrists. Yeah, that attack by the center column on what is really the left flank of this attack, given that 2 units of the left column are in the center now, that did not go well at all. 1 unit broke in. Great. That's not the village yet. Here I hit the village. There I have to make... So this guy's going downhill, so he didn't have to check first, which meant the French unit, which was a little beaten up, did break. But here I'm hitting those grenadiers. And it's actually just 1 unit there with an extended line going into the village. But you can see there's no Russian or Austrian units there anymore. They both ran, and we got a bloodlust with no losses, several losses for the coalition forces. And that's got Kolerath, I believe it is there. Yeah, it's Kleinmeyer there. It's one of the Mr. K's wrecked, and Milodorovich wrecked. So those attacks may stop pretty soon. The question then becomes, well, is there enough gas in the French's tank to be able to launch an attack? Because a lot of their corps are pretty badly beaten up as well. Historically, they were in much, much better shape, having not made the march up here and gotten their asses kicked. Not because the terrain is particularly good. This is all one level, basically, and that's where most of the fighting was happening. So, we weren't really facing the uphill fighting problem. It's also less apparent on the level, on the cake levels, than in the scenarios that have specific elevation contour lines on them. Because it's really unlikely that those contour lines would follow the ones here. There are probably more on there, but I didn't want to try to justify, because then this would all be going downhill, and how much, how downhill is it? Is it enough to provide the bonus? Yeah, the map just doesn't match up. All right, I guess it's time for some of the mechanical stuff. And oh boy, am I fatigued after, doing those attacks. But on the other hand, the coalition doesn't have any more fight in it. Well, over here might still, but that center column has nothing left to it. Not making fire, defensive fire or whatever. I forgot a couple units here that have to do defensive fire. that should have happened already up on the hill there. We'll see if they kill anything. This was a pretty big turn to come back on. Ouch. I was flowing okay before the heat was supposed to come, but there was a little bit of a respite in the battle, and now everything's hitting again, and I think this was the turn that's going to determine it, because we're going to start seeing failure checks, and I'm guessing this fails. This has a chance of failing. Not high. It had a chance this turn. Issues with the new command system, the way it works now, is units that are, it used to be units that were under orders were attacking or moving, doing one or the other. Now you need orders to defend. Okay, I didn't mind that with the old defensive orders, but it does sort of pad out what you might be holding and whatnot, and well, it also takes away the kind of active defense that was present here. So, yeah. Anyway, you know, what it means is, oh, look, I got flung back. Now I have to write new orders for the First Corps for it to be able to fire. Yeah, basically. That just... it creates this additional burden where, like what I had over here, where I got really used to, over here, I got really used to, oh look, the French can't fire their guns in most places. Now I gotta check, because I may have fucked up another one. 5th Corps, okay, 5th Corps does not look like it has orders. Oh no, it fell into a default defense. So I actually had some artillery I could fire here that I didn't. I'll take care of that now as I'm starting my French turn, because I do remember I didn't fire the artillery on this side either. I just forgot about the artillery fire phase. Lingering effect of perhaps me not paying attention and missing something on the last turn. There's a bunch of blown cav here that's fairly high quality. Highly unlikely they'd all be blown, but I'm leaving them as they are. They could perhaps do a number on these guys, but it's so risky to attack with cav. And one of the issues is that I don't notice the artillery in place until I'm pawing through for something else. So like these guys, I found the artillery when I'm finding them hey, I wanted to do some close combats. I feel these close combats are allowable under defense orders. Running up and trying to harass these guns, I don't know, man. I really don't know. They would be allowed to under the old rules of the game. I'm going to have to look at how they define the default defense here, because I rolled for an initiative to just sweep this out, because that's what I want to do. I got to get rid of these guns. I don't know that I have wrecked all of the center column. Knowing that I wrecked it, it's probably going to run anyway, and those guns aren't going to be a problem. But right now, I'm seeing these guns positioning themselves ready to deploy, and yeah, you know, I should be able to charge up there. I know under the old system I could do that, because all I'd have to do is stay within range of whatever my command is. I'm not sure I have that kind of tactical flexibility under these rules. The answer is I still can, as long as I keep Udino sitting here somehow, which feels unreasonable again, but that is the same as the old system, the bolting to the ground thing, and I'm iffy about the whole of that. Although actually, wait a minute, this is 5th Corps. 5th Corps? Whoa. What the hell? Oh no, this is the guard. Yeah, so the guard is not, it has the grenadiers attached. The guard is not a core in this one, which means it doesn't have a core unit, which means, yeah, I have to use the bolt the commander in the position. And this is where I get into problems, is that the game stops making sense if you don't have command units. If you don't have some kind of center of command you can bolt down, because then you can't use your forces the way that you'd expect to. Now, as an example, I can't send my leader in a charge. You know, I just can't. And that's especially bad if it's like a cav division or something, or a division that's heavy in cav, like the right or the AGL over here, or the cav wing. It just does not work anymore. Cav didn't exist in the CWB system as a really effective arm, so no biggie. They weren't going to charge each other, and you didn't need them. But with the emphasis both on cavalry being more effective here and on close combat for the new version 3.0 system, it's a big deal that I can't move these things, and I feel like I've got to violate that, which I think I've discussed before, at least in some ways or another. I don't see a means of handling that. The game could have come up with an answer for it, which is to give every level of command that you could reasonably give orders to, and that goes down to the division, I'm afraid, a command center marker, which, you know, would be a pretty big deal. But it's especially bad when you've got things that are meant to operate as a core and can't operate correctly, like the guard here, can't operate correctly because they're not being treated as a core. That's problematic in my view. And everything on the coalition side is that way. Everything. Again, in the old system, it wasn't as big a deal because it wasn't as Napoleonic. It was the CWB system translated over. So yeah, I think I'm gonna launch attacks all along that line. First, I got to fire my artillery. I've already started firing some artillery here. Did some attacks. Not really following my sequence of play. Another problem that I have is it's really hard for me to focus in on an area and not do a lot of stuff in that area. Because otherwise I can't keep in mind what I'm doing. You know, do my cav need to move? Does, yeah, all kind of stuff like that. Is the action that I'm doing, it feels like all the actions on one little area of the board are an atomic feature rather than, oh look, it's time for me to do the cav charges or whatever. It's a problem I had with the VLE system too. When you get things interleaved so much, it's just, now the cav does go with the movement, but I didn't see, yeah, it's because I didn't see the artillery here, but here, yeah, I've forgotten them too, so I got to pre-fire them. Extraordinarily effective artillery fire. Not only did I rout both units on the flank, but I killed Francis and caused a couple of casualties. Neat. New Austrian Emperor time. I found I have an error. Another one. The 4th Corps actually is operating under default defense orders. I didn't think it was. I thought it had fallen back and not taken orders the way the 1st had. No, it's got them. And so I had some additional artillery fire. But that's important because it means I can go storming in for close combats with them. And that's going to be important because I'm planning on sending the center all the way to hell right now. Results for the turn. Up here, the French did okay. Got knocked back with firefights in a couple of places, but nothing too terrible. Routed, well, those units were routed by artillery fire, but took some of the guns out, made the whole situation look a lot less tenable for that column to be able to continue. They may choose to voluntarily emergency withdraw under these kind of circumstances. However, I could have charged them. I'm so tempted not to charge over with Cub, though, just because it gets butchered so often. Even if you don't form square, it's a really risky situation. Up here, we had a couple of attacks. One on this guy, and the French were routed back. But here, they managed to rout a unit of guard. The problem, of course, is my core centerpiece is sitting right there, and that's going to get stomped on just for the disruption it causes. That's part of the system. It's always worth it. You almost always hit those. It's going to cause an emergency withdrawal the next turn, and I could also swerve around and come in behind those guns, take them out, do all kind of nastiness to that 5th Corps. I think we're at it's time to do the maintenance work for the turn. It's supposed to be another hot day. Today only going to be up to 90, but up here it's hellish when it gets anywhere near there. And I don't know. But things are kind of cooling off, so I figure I can play a little bit of this each day instead of playing something else. I'm not having the fun that I felt like I should be with this. I was before, though, so I don't know. I mean, I was starting to get into it, and then it's just so hard to pick up again. It's such a burdensome system now. And I even had some recovery on 1st Corps. Oh, plus I forgot about this guy, 324. He gets a recovery chance too. Let's see, morale. I don't know, not unless he was with his commander, and his commander's in a shaken stack, so I don't know. Outside of this, what am I doing other than panicking about my life if I ever think about it, or feeling sad about things otherwise? I started, because I'm down the basement so much of the days now, I started reorganizing and trying to fit things together for my magazine games, which, I don't know, over the course, basically since I moved here, or certainly since the flooding, I stopped really paying much attention and just started piling up new acquisitions and whatnot, and even things that like I pulled out to play, and instead of putting them back in order. But instead of putting them in the way that I've got them in a file cabinet. But, you know, I've got folders per era, but I'm sort of swapping that around, trying to put more folders into the file cabinet. Eventually, what I'd like to get to is so that maybe there's like a folder per game or something, so I can put the counters in with the games. Because before that, I had a pile of boxes up here that had all my counters, again sorted by era and everything, which used to be a workable result, but like everything else in my life game-wise, the number of magazine games and the like, I count things like Against the Odds that come with, you know, a flat tray, and some of the old SPI flat trays, although I have a lot of them in their boxes now, but I had them all loose before. And just kind of put them, I don't even know what I was saying. God, I'm getting so fucking senile. Yeah, the collection's bloated so much that the boxes weren't really working very well. If I can't get things into an individual folder with the counters in the folder, maybe I'll try some smaller, some smaller or smaller period separations for how many counters go in a thing. But I really haven't been able to deal with what I've had recently. And what I don't want to do is create lots and lots of, like use boxes or something for the magazine games. That gets really irritable, or that causes great irritation for me. And then I've got games that might as well be in there, like this Atlanta thing. This is how I bought it. It was the only way I could get a copy of it at a reasonable price, was where it was in really shitty shape. But I wanted to see it, and yeah, I don't know. All right, I'm just babbling for no reason, I think. Cool enough that I can steal a little bit more time for this. Steal from where? Yeah, I don't know. From doing nothing whatsoever, because that's my other option. That sorting thing. I've got everything put away into folders now, and it's like no worse than it was. The next step I take is going to be hefty. It was a big effort already. And anyway, another loose cannon, this time on Langeron. So I'm trying to get something. He's going to fall back further. That's what the French wrote in quotes, because I'm not going to write down one turn order sets. Kolarov got an emergency core withdrawal. I decided to throw Milidorovich in with him, because there's just no way he can continue an attack in the condition that he's in. That puts me to the only thing that the I don't even know if I need an emergency withdrawal. I may just cancel the orders, because then I can fall back into a default defense around here. I think that'll make more sense. I'll write it as that. I may do the same with the right. Being able to fling the 5th Corps back seems like a good idea. So I'm going to keep the attack going with the right and the guards. The guards are fine. The right had I mean, everything always has a chance of failing, but the right has a reasonable chance. They need to roll a 5 or more. And we perform that little bit of nastiness, taking some artillery fire for doing so, but also scare some of the guns away since they op-fired already. Might as well charge them. Could have charged these guys instead, so it didn't really make that much of a difference, because I would have been behind them. And you got really the Russians looking at the coalition in general, looking at trying to form some kind of defensive line here. The battle is at a point where I would say it's close to over here. What do I have? The coalition has the right wing, doesn't have a lot of meat in it. I'm not gonna launch another attack based just on this unless there's some tremendous opportunity available. Especially since, well, actually look, no, it's wrecked. The infantry part of it's wrecked. Yeah, so that's worn out. The guards, wow, they're kind of beat up too. Obviously, the 2 left-wing columns over here are badly beaten. The center, now beaten. I got a couple of units that are in good shape still. Langeron, who took forever to get on the map. Kleinmeyer, who also took his good time. The stuff that was intended to sweep around, and that I never should have given, not just the orders that they had, but the activities they had. And all of this kind of is, the stuff that, what kind of went wrong and what didn't fire properly was the stuff that was intended to be the attack on the first day that had orders to attack. It was kind of neat stuff could happen if I did launch that surprise initial attack. But what it meant was I didn't have all my force for the attack that I did eventually make. this counterattack to sweep the French back off. Now, on the French side, they didn't get away for free after attacking up here. And we can see First Corps, and a lot of leader losses, by the way. First Corps is relatively beaten up, although the 1st Division is still pretty solid. Kellerman even took some hits here. 3rd Corps is perfectly fresh. That's that thing coming down over there. There's like room for a battle down there. You know, both sides have forces that could launch an attack. Soul's 4th Corps, beaten up largely. Lannes' 5th Corps has taken some significant hits. Could they still fight? You know, yeah, there's units here that could still fight. The Imperial Guard is still available. Now, it's more expensive. Counts as 1 division for orders. I'm trying to see whether they... yeah, there's the elite morale unit. 2 there, 4 there. Over here, do we have one elite morale unit? If we wreck the entire Russian Guard, it's worth 3. So the French Imperial Guard is worth twice as much as the Russian Guard, but it's split over 2 different divisions, essentially. The reliance at this point is, do I throw the Guard in to fight, a battle? Do I send Davout to attack those guys? Other than that, it's all pretty iffy. If the answer is yes, say the Guard wants to attack, well, what would they attack with? Because I don't want to send them alone, obviously. And, there's a division of the 1st Corps, a division of the 5th Corps, actually 2, because the Grenadiers are still in pretty good shape, that I could piece together and use. 4th Corps, Legrand, this stuff back here is still kind of fresh. So, I mean, I do have forces that I could send into play. You can't really say much of that about the coalition forces. Most of them are pretty damn worn out. So it's up to the French if they want this battle to continue going. They're certainly not getting currently the kind of victory that Napoleon got historically, but part of me just wants to say, yeah, this was an interesting experiment. Trying for a first day attack, failing. Having the French just sweep back up there proved to be more ineffective than I expected. Mainly they just took so many damn casualties on the attack. Whereas if they had waited, let the coalition hit them first, and then chased the broken coalition, I think they'd be in much better shape. Because that's really what the coalition was able to do. They got smacked early on. Okay, they got pushed back, but they weren't in that bad a shape. And were able to launch an attack after that. An attack that, well, cost them more losses than they gave, but still looked kind of impressive for a while. Remember is that historically, there was basically no fighting on the first day. So if you count the amount of time that there was actual fighting happening up on the hill on the first day, and before the battle, essentially, and then what has happened so far, we've covered about the same amount of time. It's just the French were in, much, much better shape historically. Because, again, they didn't launch their attack until they had largely dented the capabilities of those coalition forces. Of course, there's no reason that the coalition has to attack in the scenario. There's absolutely no reason. Maybe if you're playing the option here. The main thing is, are there orders at the beginning of of the scenario. Looking for the scenario. There we go. Yeah, so here's the thing. The Allies are forced into the second day orders, or the coalition is, in which case they have to, they have attack orders in place to cut across the valley. And yeah, that's going to hurt. They're much better off on the defense, especially with all those cannons that they can't use as massed batteries to pick off enemy guns like the French will be able to do here. Although, I don't know. I've been plinking back and forth. Because these aren't adjacent, and I think I'm not allowed to mass batteries if they're not adjacent. I don't remember. Davout got his initiative, and he's going to march up to the Pratzen Heights, blasting through whatever he needs to do it. Great. Battle's not over, that's for sure. Probably going to work out poorly because, well, it's hard to tell. There's not a whole lot. These, while fresh, don't have a whole lot of artillery with them and whatnot, so, and they're also without orders right now. So they may be difficult to manage to provide a decent defense. In the center, well, I started to think, I haven't rolled the results yet, but the straggle results that I'm going to get from the 5th Corps are probably not worth the casualties that I took on the one guard, I think, unit. Yeah, that charged in there to do the damage. The artillery fire I took was quite hefty. So because I got a good result by making a heavy cav charge into that guard unit, and oh boy is it hurt now. It's nearly permanently wrecked. We got casualties up to 91 at this point. It is not in good shape. That was definitely not worth it for the stragglers. Cav Corps has orders to support the 5th Corps, whatever that means. It has been mainly defensive, but those orders aren't gone, and now that the 5th is falling away, we're going to help support their retreat. And, well, if Davout's going to attack, Napoleon's going to go talk to Legrand here and try to get him involved in that. And, I think what we're going to do is we're going to attach him. He's already detached. I'm going to attach him over to Davout, let him operate with that. Then go back up here and maybe start committing more and more forces to see what we can do to the coalition while they're kind of knocked back on their heels a little bit. But I got to see what happens here. I don't think I can just, I don't want to fling damaged units or guard into a battle until Davout is moving up the heights, which may be pretty late in the day when it comes around to it. But yeah, mostly that disengagement by 5th Corps worked really, really well, and coalition just wants to go home. Too bad the Austrians don't have a home right now. Life is making my brain fuzzier than normal in the sense that I'm like in this sort of, we'll call it panic, and I'll talk about that later, but not on the game videos. Anyway, I started with what it means is it makes it harder for me to cope with the complexities of this game, or they begin to seem more like the complexities of my life that are too much to cope with. So I run away and I played, I read a book and finished it, and then one I'd been reading for a while, and then I played like the whole night Baseball Mogul, which was 2 seasons. They take me several hours each, 3-4 hours each. So let's see what happened. I rolled for initiatives over here. That didn't give me anything. I gave some orders to somebody or another. Who is it? To the 1Ls. Where the fuck they are? They're over here now. No, wait. 1L is Doktorov. Alexander's going back here so he can write orders to the C's because the C's don't make sense on their own. Like, the rules for them don't really allow you to give in-person orders unless, I don't know, you come up with other stuff. The 1Ls are not deployed yet in defensive, but following standard no orders, I could be in positions that I'm in. I threw both the guards and the right into defensive orders, and I haven't moved them yet. I probably want to. Probably want to get the gun back and whatnot. And I don't know. Lots of artillery fire. With all the artillery that's firing right now, because enough units have orders, I'm running through, like 6 or 7 rounds per turn. Now, I came up here in part or largely because if I don't get some play in, I'm fucked. Like I lose track and I just stop playing for a while. But I do have to think about these guys and then do the counterfire. All right, I guess that's it. It's just, the distraction and the way my brain is starting to deteriorate due to this panic situation is, and there's no fucking reason for it. I should just stow it all away and say, screw it, give up. But I am incapable of doing that. And because that's a decision too, right? But I feel like I have to come up and try to play a turn. I don't know if I'm going to get the French turn in today, though. Stuff came and confused me and made things worse. I wanted to go into, before I babbled on shit like that, is the command issues. So, units sometimes have to retreat. What happens to the command radius if units retreat? Units sometimes are routed and they can take their commander with them. What happens to the bolted down command radius if these things happen? This was always the case in the system. And I don't think it got clarified in the new rules, and it never really was in the old rules. Whenever you have these sort of disparate divisional commands and stuff like that, you end up in situations where there really isn't a great answer. And I just think the whole bolting down rules don't quite work. You need something else, a hex number or something to say this is where you're centered around while you're in this weird state. Now, some of the things have been made worse by the version 3 rules, where in Napoleonic combat, hey, you got to get close, you got to do the close combats to attack. Therefore, you cannot defend yourself without doing close combats all over the place. And that just is goofy. Yeah, I need to have this big, brigade sitting back here, or whatever, half brigade, doing nothing. And I'm never allowed to leave it. And it's never allowed to move, because that's my headquarters for this. It's really a goofy concept. And it was an attempt to make things work with less counters, and I think that's the only factor involved in it. Okay. The other thing, which has to do with the new rules, that I wanted to harp about was, hey, it's bad enough I have to check my own commands to see if I can fire offensively, but I have to also check the defender's orders to see if they can fire defensively, as long as it's not opportunity fire. Opportunity fire is always there. But I don't know which of these stacks of artillery with artillery in them are under which command and whatnot. The easy thing to do was always just kind of flip your way through and check them. But now I have to check this, check that, check this, check that, back and forth, back and forth. all the same shit. That's the end of the coalition turn. Now I have to handle the French turn, which I don't feel up to. I'm obviously too fucking frustrated by all of this. It's not the game. I mean, the game is a heavy burden, but it's other shit. Okay, so after completely wasting the day, and that was counted on, but now I'm afraid I'm going to waste tomorrow too, and well, tomorrow today. It's well past midnight by the time I do anything other than wake up and eat. And the processes that I deal with early in my day. Now that I'm not working, you know, these are things I would do while I was working, but I can't give them up. Patterns, man. Yeah. Patterns get you through, and they're the only thing that exists. They're what humans are. Bundles of patterns of behavior. So, anyway, had to check. Napoleon gave orders here. I think the First Corps accepted its orders to defend, which means more of these artillery are on the line. Not sure Fifth Corps is on the line. This looks like I crossed this out, so I'm going to have to go talk to them. But I gave orders to these guys to go attach and started to launch the combat down here. Well, there's a lot of cav on both sides. So the French launched 2 cav attacks to try to brush aside some of that cav so that they can kind of get around, maybe try to outflank that artillery and do something, who knows. But we were beaten on both the cav fights. Not really outclassed, about equal. Ended up a shootout, and in both cases, the Austrians caused 3-1 losses. Morale hits. They killed Bussier over here. Lan went in, oh no, Davout went in with one of them. Could have been a lot worse, right? But I'll continue the movements there, and then at least there's no more attacks going to happen. But there's a fair amount of trying to organize shit and figure out where it belongs. The exciting action that's happening right now, I want to go a little more into detail. So, in a way, no real reason to drive off the cav with the French cav, although it opened up a door, but it was painful. French unit moves forward. The remaining Austrian cav charges. It throws into square. It gets a repulse because it's hard to call off cav in this system, and does a little bit of damage. Another unit slides by, gets some artillery hit, makes a forced march to get itself into here. Doesn't straggle. It's good quality stuff. Coming in from, I think that's going to have to be a flank hex. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, that's going to be a flank attack, which means the artillery still gets to fire. I was hoping to get around to the rear. This unit would have been able to. So, yeah, the cav did matter. And the cav mattered in terms of being able to get through here, but more infantry would have been just as good. You know, infantry can scare away the cav just by squaring up, and after the cav declares it's going to charge. And if it doesn't declare it's going to charge, it has to get the hell out of Dodge. It's big enough that, you know, kind of like the Leipzig one, I had to move around. Well, that one was fucking huge, but this one, I can't comfortably reach over there, you know? So, yeah, I pick up my stuff and move around. It's just not as many. That thing, I had like 4 pit stops along the way. Here, generally I've been just up there, but I had to move down here because there's some fighting happening now. This is the kind of interesting topic of, what do I find interesting enough to like come on video and talk about? I mean, I actually broke into a new video clip, and now for this too, just to say, yeah, I have to move around the map a little bit. A little weird, but whatever. An idiot. So I shouldn't have moved yet. I'm starting to move units over here, and I realize, oh shit, I really ought to take that combat into account before I switch focus. Because after I do that, yeah, I have some bookkeeping type stuff to do, but for the most part, we're okay. But that's the one icky thing. Attacks, that was not a worthwhile thing to do. I got safe. I didn't get hit by the artillery, which is lucky because it was, well, it's halved because it's flank. So it's 2 shots on the 2 table, but it could have easily caused some casualties. But then going in, well, it's a good Austrian unit. It held, not guaranteed, but I had to check morale first. I'm an A morale, so it's almost assured I hold. And then it ends up a shootout. I take an extra casualty, but I slightly reduce its morale. By the time I cut through these units, which it feels like I should be able to do, I'm higher quality stuff, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not going, I'm not going to have any more gas left to go. I think the battle is over. I think this is sort of the last gasp of the battle, because the coalition's not going to attack from up here. The French are not going to launch an attack here unless it looks like it's liable to be successful. So this is actually the main thing that's left to do. And, you know, by the time it's done, we're going to be fair way into the day. It's going to be almost over. Obviously, I can't call it until I see what happens there. There could be swings of luck and whatnot, but... and now back to trying to figure out what my lines are up to here. Because they're just, you know, it's a mess trying to recover from that retreat. That mess is because of the new orders rules. So 5th Corps normally would be able to follow normal command and control rules, but they cannot because they're still in a no order status, so some of these units aren't going to find their way back. But basically it means pawing through all my units and everything. And this would have been problematic anyhow, because the French line is compacted, which means that there's 2 corps, the 1st and 5th, kind of intermingled, and separating them out would be a pain. And after making, oh, I forgot, you know, I've got these markers I'm doing. The old game, you used to have to declare your straggler recovery, which I miss. And it also had low ammo, which no longer exists. Which is why you have artillery wagons, but it's not the only thing. Ammo had to be recovered even if you didn't have wagons in the game. But now, because close combats are over right away, and that's the only real combat that would prevent resupply, it makes sense again. But what was I getting to? Yeah, so I make best guesses as to what units can recover stragglers and what can't. Much better. I don't know. This is faster because some of the units I can just say, yeah, they recovered, they didn't. In those cases, I would use the straggler recovery as much as I use these chips, just to mark, hey, something's going on there. I forgot about their existence. But where things are more detailed, so you're 4 hexes away from the enemy, but you're not sure whether or not, you know, which units are going to get shot at by artillery or whatever, you put straggler recoveries on all the units, and then as the enemy fires, they get removed. And then the few units that have straggler recoveries on them, you look up and you make the rolls for separately. I may try to do that here. I mean, there's no reason not to. It's just, it's not, you know, in the 3.0 rules. That these counters have been disappeared from the rule set, essentially. Okay, so that's the end of the French turn. I'm not really in the mood to go right into a coalition turn, but you know, I think the turns are going to start getting a little faster. The big attack up here is over. That's still a little bit of a pain in the ass, but for the most part, I'm not even really playing a game anymore. You know, other than what's going on down there, I'm just doing some mechanical aspects and tightening up lines and whatnot. rolling some dice. Nobody's got any orders they really want to follow. Well, there are new orders. So like Napoleon's going over to Fifth Corps to give, I guess, Lon orders to go set up a defensive line. But if nobody's making an attack, all we're doing is plinking with the artillery. And interesting thing about that, those Russian guns, the smaller ones, aren't very good at this range. There's no mass batteries for them. So I'm starting to plink them off and hit the ones that are big enough to still hit me. And, you know, make it so that they can't fire at all. So pretty soon I think we'll not be seeing any return fire by the coalition, which really should be assigned to depart the area because, yeah, there's some chance of doing some damage long range. Most of what you see is, you know, a couple morale hits, but that again suppresses fire and gets a little bit of an advantage. The artillery tracks, which again, shouldn't be used in the 3.0 rules, but what the hell. Since I have numbers and whatnot. Are getting a little low, though. I mean, I'm down. I thought I wouldn't come close. I don't have much more than I need for this battle. I went 2 days instead of 1. The pace of my game has changed a little bit. Part of me is like, well, play my baseball mogul, you know, drown myself. But the fact that I really should get things done tomorrow, still completely random. There's nothing online that tells me what I actually need. They say 2 forms of ID and list 4 things. I have a valid driver's license. That's one of the 4. But they say like these things instead of giving you, like I'm used to, hey, you need something from column A and either something else from column A or something from column B type of identification rules. In New York State, they were very, very specific about what you could use. And so, you know, driver's license, passport, these things would work. It wouldn't be 2 forms of something, and basically they gave you driver's license, state-issued ID. You know, that's a driver's license for most people, right? It's like, yeah, the state-issued ID is your alternative for that. Passport or passport card, which are essentially the same thing. Well, I have an expired passport, which is why I'm up here. I'm going to look for that if I remember after I do the turn. But, you know, the other things in their list were things like, you know, your social security card, your a proof of, you needed a proof of address specifically, you needed, you know, but they spelled it all out exactly what you need. Here they're like entirely vague, and you're supposed to resolve this with this weird ID Me company, you know. Which is why I don't know if going down to the office tomorrow, which is my plan, is going to actually even work. Maybe all they'll do is get me on a video conference with an ID Me person, which presumably I should have been able to do from home, but that's not clear either because the only way you can do it is through their app or something. It's just fucking crazy. Anyway, that's why I'm up playing another half turn. I start doing the coalition turn, and I write myself some orders for the center wing. They're going to arrive at different times because there's 2 different locations, and I can't do them verbally, although those would have arrived at different times and would have worked fine. I don't know. But then I come to here where I have my next issue. Now, I'm going to roll for some initiatives anyway, but here is the exact example of what I was talking about in terms of like why the bolt down defense rules don't work, and why I kind of liked the defensive orders in the old system. Under the defensive orders in the old system, which were an optional rule, mind you, the bolt down was the base rule. Under the defensive orders rules, a unit was bolted down with no orders, whatever. And, in some ways I don't mind that so much with the no orders, whatever. But it could not defend a location. If it came under fire for like more than 2 turns without an explicit defense fire order, it had to do an emergency withdrawal. It was, hey, we're not supposed to defend here. What should we do? That was probably a little too harsh. Because, you hit in a meeting engagement, you should be able to drop down, and I like the way this handles that. But this leader led a cav charge, which technically he shouldn't have been able to do. Although, technically what that meant was he had to always have a cav unit bolted down with him to stay in his hex, right? Which means you don't have all your cav to defend an area when you're defending an area. Okay, so he was forced back as a result of that cav charge. Great. Again, shouldn't have happened, but it could have still happened had he been charged. Then he would be forced back. It's possible to force a bolted down commander out of the hex they're in. But my orders, as far as I'm concerned, because I accepted a default defend, I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm under no orders, which changes things, in my view. And it's so hard to keep track when you have so many different units. So yeah, I threw the... Oh, no, that's the cav. I'm looking for the AGL. The AGL's under no orders right now. So so they're in kind of a problematic position where maybe this leaves two options. But if they were under defense orders and got flung back this way, I'm not sure what should happen. I guess everything runs away and goes and finds their commander. Which again, that doesn't seem reasonable. Like, if I'm under orders to hold an area, I should be able to hold that area, regardless of whether the commander wanders away, which he might do under fire. I should be able to keep trying to hold that area. There's a little bit of an exception. So the reason the headquarters work better is the idea of, here's a zone we can defend, and the headquarters is behind the lines, not up on the line where the commander is, and has to be if you want all your units to be defending. And you're really kind of making an indication that that defense has been completely breached. I don't feel like that defense was completely breached when a cav unit charged and was forced back or whatever, So then the two options that I'm left with are, does this withdraw back to there, which is kind of what I'd like to do, to tell you the truth. I don't like where I am. Or do I have to move back to try to defend where I was? And I'm going to use, to some extent, the guidance of, you know what, this guy was not under orders to hold that territory. He had not made the decision to hold that territory. Therefore, yes, he can fall back. Would he be forced to? I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely a situation that I would consider never really works within the rules. And it's because of this stupid bolting down. Now, I could see very small forces, and maybe this counts, as being unable to defend an area once their line is breached at all. But it shouldn't be just once the commander is flung back, especially since the commander kind of has to be on the line if you want to defend. Then that makes him some sort of weird target, push him back and everything goes back. Already the headquarters are a little shaky on that, but something needs to be in place to force defenses to fall back. Now, if you play with the optional old system written defensive orders, you had something. It was, you took enough casualties that you failed a defense check and fell back. It felt right, Now, Dean and maybe some of the scenario designers more or less came out with arguments on every damn CWB game of do not use default defense in this scenario. The defenders need to be able to, players need to be able to defend territory. I think they took the wrong tact on that. The problem wasn't that the default defense rule was just a or the written defense orders was just a failure in general. It was that it was too easy to collapse. That there should be some additional modifiers. But it's always the case that a unit might just, that a whole command might just fall apart. You know, there's always should be some slight chance of that, which is kind of where the problem is. Now, of course, there's no chance of that under the don't use the rules anymore. So all you get is this sort of half-assed, when you step on a command headquarters, that breaks the whole thing. Sometimes that makes sense. In the current Napoleon French position, you know, yeah, it might make sense. It might make sense depending on what you're hitting. But if you hit this one, the flank should shift back. 6 to 12 hex is good enough for that. It may or may not be. But, you know, yeah. I feel like this was one of the decisions that was really wrong. Instead of sticking with a simplified design to try to force units to withdraw, that has a very gamey, go into this hex that they're trying to, you know, that's behind their lines, and you'll get it. And then a raider could do it or whatever. Just a little weird surprise could completely destroy your defensive position. I felt a lot more comfortable with something that's close to the defensive orders. Anyway, time to roll for some initiatives. Yeah, I'm full of words right now. The equivalent to what we're seeing here with this fallback because the leader got driven back in the core level is an emergency withdrawal, which causes stragglers and disrupts their orders and whatever. Of course, if you're on no orders or default defense, your orders are disrupted anyway. But under this system, you would lose your defensive orders. You couldn't fall back and keep defending, which you can't do in this system. And I find that a little disturbing. It feels like, I guess you could do it under complex orders, but there's nothing that allows you to have kind of a semi-mobile defense, right? Which again, maybe that's applicable for the arrow, but I'm less convinced of it. But yeah, there is no straggle check for the leader having been moved. Like, if you play the game by the rules as written and try, it's not explicit, and try to come up with what would happen under these conditions. You come up with, all right, well, I guess I have to withdraw back to the leader because he got forced back. But I'm under the same orders. I'm either under the default defense or the no order system. I don't lose those. Obviously, losing no orders wouldn't make sense. And I don't take any straggle checks, which kind of makes these individual units on individual defensive orders that don't have a core support on them maybe kind of stronger, more resilient in their defenses than the French core system. I don't know. I don't understand the points behind it. I think that that written orders are the way to go with this, that they really are. But written orders they didn't want to have too many orders written, and that makes some sense. Although now the system requires you to keep track of, what the units without any orders written for them are doing. Are they default defense or are they no orders? You could do that with a counter or something pretty easily. They didn't choose to include that option. But yeah, There are some real flaws to that old CWB design for the orders and command rules that I feel like I'm not willing to expend the effort to formalize what the fix should be, but that I am willing to kind of fudge around. Gameplay itself, not a lot happens. A little bit of line straightening, recovery type stuff, and Kleinmare, his units are falling back towards him, which somewhat, some of the withdrawal rolls kind of make sense in the sense of, not for this situation, but if Davout smashes into those, drives him back a couple hexes, and then can get to his goal, orders writing makes you kind of start questioning, should I be going for my goal or pushing the enemy? Again, generally the player is allowed to have a certain amount of tactical control, but there are cases where you can exceed that. And I feel like I tried to write these orders so that he would have to smash the enemy and drive him away, which again feels fuzzy in terms of the orders. Orders should be more geographic situations, but it doesn't apply here. I have to clear that threat before I undergo my attacks. There was something else I wanted to deal with. I don't remember what the fuck it was. I don't know if Davout got to recover his cav on his turn. In fact, I pretty much know he did not. I'm trying to remember what the other thing is. Ah, yes. Yeah, it looks like he did. Okay. Yep. Did I just lose it again? Yeah, here it is. So the backs of the units looking the same as the flags for the Corps headquarters. Bad design choice. I don't think that's the case with the newer games, but yeah, it was problematic here. And is that just, well, yeah, it's just for the French in this game because there are no coalition Corps headquarters. Okay. Obviously, it was in the last place I looked. No. It actually was where I expected it, and I'm kind of glad. This has been a painful situation. Of course, now I'm just going to grab it and everything's great. But at least I cleared out a lot of stuff here, and this is manageable enough that I can arrange what's supposed to go there, where it's supposed to go. So that makes me a little happier. After I get some of this shit out of the way, I probably have to take time to take another turn. But this thing is, I'm sure, out of date. I think they last only 10 years, so I don't know how much good it's going to do me. But it is the only other thing on their list that I have. I'll bring other things like Social Security and birth certificate and everything, but damn. This is in the last place I looked because you wouldn't keep looking after you find something. Usually. I will, because I have to clean up some more of this crap here. But I go down to take out the trash. A lot of it is scrap paper, and I just was piling it there, which is unfortunate because the reason I was doing it was, to begin with, I had these things which were meant to organize important papers and stuff, but I've got another bin somewhere else that's important papers, and a lot of the stuff has just expired in terms of any importance. So the stuff that's up here, for whatever reason, it's like a year of taxes or two, and some other stuff that's of value, but that's about it. But unfortunately, this was intended to be mainly a gaming storage area, hence the games that are back there. For smaller things that, I don't know, that are kind of historical, I guess, or kind of wargame-ish. But anyway, it is expired, by the way, yeah. So I guess we'll start with another French turn. I'm way too early to go down there. So Somehow or another, a little after midnight turned into, look, it's dawn. Yes, the dawn comes, or look, there's daylight out, a lot of daylight. I did play one season, so that probably killed, 4 hours or something. But it just happens without noticing. All right, and I'll roll. We don't get a random event. We haven't gotten one in a while. And I have been rolling. And I'll start to try to figure out what the Frenchies are doing. As noon rolls around, Davu continues to punch in. These guys can't fire anything except opportunity fire. They did get one shot. Bounced off this stuff. Both taking approximately equal casualties. A little more stragglers on Davu's side. And everything else is really just recovery and plinking of artillery. And it's a lot of effort for something that, like, this is going to decide whether or not there's a battle. Because, and Davu is probably taking, let's see, he's 3rd Corps. He's taken enough. He only has 1 division that I don't think he's going to be able to keep rolling, After he brushes aside the forces in his way, there's not going to be enough oomph left in him. This might help, but right now it does not look very promising. And some of me just wants to wrap it up and say, you know what? We've got essentially a draw here, which is, and if I count it out, it'll come up that way, I'm pretty sure, which is significantly, less than what Napoleon got historically. This was one of his more decisive victories, especially once he was emperor. All right, I think I go down and I play myself another season or part of one, because it's too early to head out, and I've got, I guess, what I need. Yeah, I found everything that I can possibly bring there. So yeah. So back at the game, back away from the game, but I'm here at the game. I got a lot done today. Like, I went out for a walk and got my IDing completed. Got a bunch of other tasks that I have to do now, which I'm planning on doing tomorrow, and I have to, but it's a pain in the ass. Put them off. Put playing the game off too, because I was fatigued and everything. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because there is something similar. When I'm playing games, like, I had a hard time coming up here to play. You might ask, well, why? It's just your game, and why worry about that and everything? I'm not terribly worried about it, but somehow I'm able to muscle my way through coming up and doing a little bit of a game at a time. Maybe because I have this chat that I do on here, maybe that's what does it. Maybe because there's a social contract to get these things done, no matter, for whatever reason. I'm not sure. But I've always had the capability, even before the videos, to say, damn it, it's not going to play itself, and go up and just force myself to play a little bit. That may be because it's finite. I don't know. I can't really. I try to speculate, but I can't really do so. But I don't know why. I don't know why I can do this, and there are other things that I just can't do. But there's a definite similarity to the problem. Anyway, to the game itself. So I started writing the order, or I started dealing with the coalition orders, and unfortunately there's a little bit of a slope here between the tables, and that causes some spillage. the game itself already causes me to kind of have to reveal counters underneath other counters by leaving them only partially stacked. I remember somebody harassing a guy who used to play a lot of the OCS stuff, Billy Boy. May he rest in peace. About, an image he showed that had counters kind of facing this way and that with a, get those soldiers straight in line, soldier. Get those troops straight in line. Sometimes you need to be able to display things in a messy way. It has to appear messy, and sometimes, and the other thing is, unless you're OCD about stuff, and I'm a little bit, it's an annoying amount of work to keep everything stacked cleanly and everything. Yeah. Anyway, we're just not talking about what we're supposed to. Again, that's what happens because my heart's not really in it. I forced myself up here, and talking about other shit is sort of the treat, I guess. Having humans presumably out there that I can speak to. And yeah, I know some of you respond and tell me, yeah, you listen to all of them and everything. And again, I don't get that, but I don't know. I have my addictions that I can't even quantify. What the hell am I at? Right. So I wrote some orders to Langron, but I got to be careful there because I'm also going to roll for initiative. So this is the thing. Under this system, you can't roll for initiative for orders that are coming in pending, that you're writing another copy of, whatever. So I can't have Alexander try to tell Langron to do the obvious thing he needs to do and have Langron try to come up with it on his own. I'm a little disturbed by this. If it's the obvious thing, it feels like you should be able to try multiple routes to get to it. Instead, what I did was I sent Langron orders to fall back to here, whereas my plan is to roll for initiative for him to go up here. And we'll roll that right away. So we'll roll his, and we'll roll his little buddy up there, Kleinmeyer or whatever. Langron's actually a 2. Okay, that's a 43. So I switch the dice colors based on who it is. So that's Russian, so I use a green die first. Now, for the Austrians, I'll use a white die first. And that's an 11. He just got another loose cannon, and I got to figure out what that's going to be. I mean, the French are probably going to tell him to go down this way. He's heading that way anyway, so to clear my way, and then I can engage Langron. Okay, but, and let me put a marker here to remind me of that. It's not the same kind of marker, but yeah, it just, it feels like, okay, if you're not allowed to write the same order, well, how much can you fudge similar orders? So like, what I want to do is defend Prats and Heights, but defending this might be just as valid an option. I don't know. It's like the situation of, if something is truly obvious, it seems reasonable that the guy in front of the situation, who can see it the most clearly, sees exactly what they must do. Reports going back and forth between headquarters, well, they might be giving a similar picture. What's going to change, and what may be the problem is, or why this all works, is by the time Alexander's orders get to Langeron, they may no longer be suitable. And that's the danger of doing, the orders from here. But it doesn't seem at all unreasonable that they would come up with the same idea. It's just, you've got the question of whether he's going to go through all the formality of writing it, or whether he's going to break the protocol of waiting for orders and make an individual initiative decision to do the same thing, right? You know, like there's a fire on the stove, and you inform headquarters that, and then you decide to put it out yourself, and headquarters sends you a message back, put it out. You know? There's only one reasonable thing to do. And, you know, okay, how much detail do you want to put in it? Because put it out could be get the fire extinguisher under the sink and spray it, or it could be, well, you may not be able to get to the fire extinguisher under the sink easily, so go, you know, run next door and ask for a fire extinguisher. Are those two different things? Yeah, they would be under this because they have different locations and they're significantly different. But one of them is far more likely to be the decision you'd make. Here, I feel like the decision both people would tell them is get back, your ass back on Pratt's and Heights. But Alexander has to write different orders because I rolled for a particular set. That's just problematic as far as I'm concerned. That's just, and there's also, there's also a limitation where you can't roll for initiative for multiple people, for multiple layers of the same command, which is something that doesn't affect the coalition here, but it would affect the French. So if a corps commander rolls for an initiative order, you can't roll for any kind of initiative for an underling of theirs. And, you know, that creates a conflict where how would you resolve it if it happens? So I kind of understand why that's there. But it should not be unreasonable for the corps commander. Coordinating it would be a problem. So if the corps commander rolled for part of his units and excluded that unit, to have that unit roll for its own initiative. But that's neither here nor there. All right, time to lob some cannonballs. All of this may be the need to talk to people, you know, there's no question of that, even just the gaming part. And there's so little happening in the game. These guys fell back, that's it. There's some artillery shot each other. I don't know. The thing, it takes a lot of effort. The system tended to be expensive all the time, and I've been playing so much of the VLE stuff, which is just a little lighter, that and it's a little. Sometimes it was hard. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in my head here, because it just feels like I'm putting so much effort in for so few pieces. But what am I actually doing? I'm trading some artillery shots, which requires poking down the line and firing. That should be pretty easy. That's not too different from anything else. Except the artillery tends to be buried under skirmishers and whatnot, which it didn't in VLE. The skirmishers tended to be in front or not on the board. Well, skirmishers were either on front or not on the board. Here, there's no reason for them not to be on the board, and you probably actually want them stacked with your units. Especially if there's artillery there, there's absolutely no value putting skirmishers out front on their own. But it's kind of dangerous to put skirmishers on their own because they become targets then. And then you can kill skirmishers, which are hard to kill. And very potentially valuable, I guess. We haven't seen people sitting next to each other. In part because the French, when they did attack, they attacked hard and didn't want to stand off at a distance and try to wear the enemy down with skirmishers, which is where they're actually one of their big strengths. Maybe why they're not doing so well on the casualty track. And there was something else. Oh yeah, so I go down the line, I fire off the artillery. Then I hit the recovery phase, and well, with all the different layers of recovery, it's just not that big a deal to remove the shakens and degrade the downgradeds. the routes, the few of them that are on the board, I have to peck through, find the morale class. It's a little harder. The stacks tend to be bigger. There's more commanders in the game. Again, the skirmishers and everything. Make die rolls on that. And then I have to make rolls on the blown cavalry, which I don't remember if there was a die roll for recovery in Viva la Emperor, or if they just recovered. I think there was a die roll. So it feels very similar. And then rolling the fatigue, the straggler recovery. Straggler recovery is a lot more common here because there's a lot more units that aren't engaged at all and that are beaten up. In Viva la Emperor, there were not that many stragglers across the board. Here, any unit that throws itself into any fight is going to start collecting up stragglers pretty heavily. And if you look at the close combat tables, you can get some really big straggler numbers off of one die roll. And so it's not like, well, in Viva la Emperor, first of all, there weren't special straggler numbers, so you'd be recovering real strength points. But in general, it wasn't really worth doing. Most of the units were either moving, fighting, or too close or whatever throughout the course of that game. Through the Leipzig one. And other games, Leipzig gave a lot of downtime. Like there were big periods where all we were doing was recovering stragglers across the board. Because of night times, there were so many nights and whatever. But here, it just, it feels like I'm doing these one after another large mechanical tasks, and there's nothing else going on. There's down there a little bit. But now I don't want to face the French turn where there's something going on. And each of the turns is just, it is feeling not quite on par with a Viva la Emperor turns, because that's just such a huge game, 10 maps, many more counters, so many turns. But this feels like maybe a third of that or something. And I'm just walking away fatigued every time. And, I'm also mentally in worse shape, I think, than I was when I was doing that, as evidenced. Well, no change in French orders. However, their firepower is beginning to take effect. I'm knocking it so that there's almost no guns left that the Russians can fire. This one's still big enough. Up here we knocked those down. More than that, well, there's some big guns here that can fire, and those have orders now. If the artillery can be knocked out enough, it might be worth launching an attack, because the artillery is one of the big hindrances and one of the big advantages to the defender. On my life, we mix these things together, right? All the stuff having to do with the unemployment. Having walked in, spent an hour and a half each way walking, spent an hour there working with them. They did some things that I think broke my account. So like now I'm not getting an email that I was supposed to get, and I can't log into it and everything. So I would have been better off using a fake text messaging account, which is what I do for my banking actually, but which I really fucking hate. But and no, I'm not giving you my account number. But yeah, it's that was the other thing I did. So yesterday was I finally transferred my wife's money out of this stupid account I never should have set up. But they couldn't transfer it to the bank that used to be in their network. And so I had to just get a cashier's check and carry it next door to another bank that I have an account at. And then I had to try to move it from there, and that's going to take a couple of days for it to work. But yeah, all right. So initial firepower is done. Now let's move in, and I know that it makes no sense to combine these two things, but I'm just videoing the game, and I need to talk about these other things, and that's just how life is for me. Anybody watching at this point probably understands this. So yeah, I gotta launch my attack over there and then run down the line with the coalition guns. Attack is kind of confusing situation because I could just launch against Langron. The orders I have are to advance up here after clearing the way and all threats. This is still a threat. I have to make my decision which way I'm going to go. And either way, there's a danger to leaving a flank open. So I got to be real careful there. My solution was to swing around behind and hit their one artillery piece, killing its ability to do opportunity fire. I never crossed its range. Then I'm in contact with it. It can't do that. Now, under the old system, walking by an enemy unit meant they'd get a shot at you. That doesn't happen now. You're able to march, 1 hex away from anything. Even with skirmishers. Skirmishers don't give you opportunity fire. Unless I'm been misplaying that. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility of just marching by the enemy. Now, I think if you march through, there's some kind of zones that cause some effect. But given that I had to force march, I probably could have, I think I did skirt him. I could have come down and up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, I could have gotten in there without moving past him. So that's not really an issue, but I really ought to look up those rules. But anyway, I tie those units down completely. Their artillery can't fire at me because I came directly behind. But the fight was just a shootout, and that doesn't do much. We got a couple casualties each and flung back. I forgot to take a check for, oops, there goes Friant. Well, I looked up a number of rules, but no indication, and I've looked this up several times, no indication that skirmishers get opportunity fire. But the equivalent thing is the zone of influence, which is what I vaguely remembered. And I'm like, well, I danced around it this time. Have I always? I think so, but I'm not sure. I have. It's only the front 2 hexes. So, yeah, it's like, you get a gap, you can just march through it. What it keeps you from doing is moving around right in front of the line. And what it does is cause you some morale impacts. And that's it. There's no opportunity for them to attack you as you're moving by them, which is presumably what the morale impact is meant to represent. There's just, nothing. And under the old system, you would not do that because you'd march by people. In terms of, you wouldn't march by people, you'd be firing at that range. If you march from one zone to another where they could fire, they'd get an opportunity fire on you. So you just don't. Now, in terms of that attacking in the rear, yeah, that was useful before. This feels a little extreme. This little command is out here. What do? Well, I run around its flank. But there's a reason for line extensions and the like, and I did not take advantage of them. They could have prevented this, or at least they could have forced me into, assuming it's still allowable, a multiple force march situation. So you get like, assuming I remember correctly, you get like three movement points per force march, and you're allowed to do it twice. 3 movement points, you get a morale check. You can do it again, and only twice. So the old system had very specific tables for each of these. So like there was a table for the stragglers from a force march, and a 2-point force march was a different table, but. And I think it was worse than 2 times the 1-point force march table, or the 1 force march, 3 movement points. So I would almost never force march 6 movement points. The other thing, though, is you didn't have to close combat to have an effect, which meant that these kind of extreme charging around the flank and using infantry kind of like cavalry. That just didn't happen. You'd kind of hit from the flank. I do have an exposed flank here, if these guys, get it into their heads to do anything. But right now, they're pretty much not. And not only did I deny opportunity fire, there's not going to be any fire here, because these guys don't have orders yet. These guys with their loose cannon, they might be allowed to drop into like default defense if they want. I don't know. It's sort of an implication. Whenever you whenever you declare your order is over, that's what happens. But I don't know if you actually get to do that with a loose cannon result. It seems like it would be an unfair advantage to allow them to fall into a default defense, because I got the worst possible result on the initiative roll. Finished up the artillery fire. The numbers are getting nasty. Maybe I will run out. 57 to 41. I mean, I don't know. It looks like, that's still like a third of what I have. And most of the game has passed by. I'll probably call it before the guns run out, because I really don't think he has the gas to make it up the hill. And this just becomes silly. And neither army's really fit to fight anymore. So all I got left is the mechanical stuff. One of the things you might note, if you've been kind of paying attention, is as these Russian guns get smaller, it is possible that I can detach guns from one of them and move it to another unit and fill that unit back up to how big it's supposed to be. So I could eliminate some of the smaller guns and turn them into, I think you can, I don't know if you can completely detach. I don't know if you can detach all points from a gun, but if I detach from 2-point guns and move it to the other, I could get to the point where I've got a couple of shots that I wouldn't otherwise have. But it's, yeah. And that's kind of, I hate that kind of stuff in the game, but there just should be something easier to do, like that you can consolidate your guns or whatever, instead of, and I'll do it that way, and ignore looking up the rules for it. So all I have left is the mechanical shit of checking to see, what recovers. Say this, and again, I don't know. I don't know if it's the how much of it's my mood, because I pointed out things about how, well, you know, VLE was about as expensive to play, whatever. Maybe it's that the rules are actually kind of tight in this, not perfect. But compared to VLE, where I can't just make shit up without feeling like maybe I'm screwing something up. And that it is making an actual attempt to be more historically accurate than it used to be or whatever. But I am finding this a lot less fun than I remember the old system being, and a lot less fun than the VLE was. It's just like, you know, the burden to what I like about the games, which is sort of that broad picture emerging from something more detailed, which I went into in some detail in VLE, in the Leipzig game, but I just feel like I'm, you know, plodding through this mechanical bullshit, and then every now and then doing something that's really, really complicated, like a close combat. Okay, so the coalition, nothing new changed over here. Trying for initiatives didn't happen. New orders reached, what's his name here? Kolerath. And he decided he didn't want to follow him. So that's a distorted. Under this system, you have to roll to see if the army commander finds out about that and can't write any new orders. In the interim, anything against initiative? Nah. Which there should be, if you want to prevent someone from taking other chances. And the rest of the army is just sitting there on defensive status. Will fire their artillery and la la la. As time ticks away and nothing happens. There's some very effective fire coming from the 1L column. Routed a unit, disordered. I went down to look at this area, and I'm thinking that these guys want to do an emergency corps withdrawal. The reason, oh well, whatever, an emergency withdrawal. The reason is, well, first of all, I am surrounded, which is one of the reasonable reasons to do it, but also I can't do anything to counter it. I don't have skirmishers, I think, unless I didn't deploy them. Yeah, I have no skirmishers on that command, and I can't fire my artillery. If I turn it around to face these guys, well, first of all, it'll be limbered, but secondly, these guys will charge into my back. And I have absolutely nothing I can do about the situation that I'm in. If I had succeeded in rolling initiative, it would make sense to throw myself into a default defense, maybe, although I think I would have gone with different orders. But yeah, I think I'm just going to run. The French have relatively effective artillery fire too. Numbers are getting down in terms of ammo, but I guess the important thing is that moving here has cleared the way for Davout to either charge up the hill or go after those guys. And I don't feel like these guys are as much of a threat anymore. Now that they've pulled away, it's harder to define them as such. Okay, so starting the French turn, had a random event. Murat can roll for initiative again. Woo. Yeah, it's kind of too late for anything to change. I mean, you know, there's half the day left, but there's just not enough oomph. Everything is undergoing its orders now. Ooh, I forgot to check Davout. Maybe he stops. Oh yeah. Uh-oh. Actually, 3 probably works for him. I gotta check his core. I don't think anything's wrecked. Okay, so Freont is really close, and that's and Boursier is also kind of close, but he would have to have both lost their leaders, which is the problem there. So I think a 3 lives for a 4. I think that's all he needs. Core stoppage 0. Yeah, he just needs a 3. Came damn close, and that would have been it. I would have taken it to scoring time at that point, because the French are not going to launch an attack if Davout doesn't start pushing up the hill, and the coalition, they're done for. I mean, they just do not have anything that's in good enough shape. Langeron is actually the exception. Langeron is in decent enough shape, and he is the thing that Davout is facing now. Anything else that has I mean, Bagration's not that bad either. Attacking is so problematic, especially if you're facing, enemy troops with their artillery, etc., and coordinating it all. The French will be able to react to anything. So there's just no way the coalition's going to attack. But honestly, I think probably the best thing for the French to do at this point is not to attack. I'm finding the new version of the system really seems to not allow offensive actions to be as effective as they should. Maybe I'm just incompetent. The other thing we got is 5th Corps is going to deploy. That'll allow me to shift my cav over probably. Oh, what else? Well, lifetime stuff. Just spent a couple hours basically trying to get a video conferencing set up for tomorrow morning. And I thought this would not be hard with the number of video cameras I have. None of my video cameras, it appears, I'm not sure. My wife's might be able to. She had some fancier ones, but I doubt it. It seems to be a pretty common thing. Video cameras don't hook up to the computer and allow you to just directly use them as a webcam. You can get a tool, obviously, to sit in the way and convert it, and some of them are very expensive, some of them not. But yeah, it was kind of disturbing. Then I spent, it took 2 hours total getting Microsoft Teams to work, which they told me you can just download it. So I downloaded it, and then I'm told, oh no, you can't use this unless you have a work or school account. It's like, okay, great, thanks. But there's a browser version of it, which seems to work just fine. It's just, that's not what they told me to do. Anyway, then I spent a significant amount of the time playing with the cameras, trying to get them to work, and then going and looking for, when I couldn't get any of them to work, my old webcam, which would be really crappy visibility and might not, they might have made me come in anyway if I had gotten that working. I don't know, it just doesn't seem to work, and that's fine. It's been banging around and stuff all along. It's probably broken. It thinks it's working, but there was no visual that I could see. Finally, the thing that worked is my wife's laptop. I managed to get in there and send the meeting link to her account and just open it up there. And now I can't uninstall Microsoft Teams. I'm not sure why. I think if I shut down my computer and restart it, it'll allow me to. It seems to be stuck thinking that it's uninstalling something. I don't know. I tried on it. I installed a stupid MMORPG that was way too old, and then I uninstalled it, and I think my uninstall is not working since then. But anyway, so I guess we play a little bit more of the game. So at the end of the line, we got Legrand coming in with Davout, making a real threat. I pushed right up against to try to take advantage of my skirmishers, but I'm not going to get to. The Russians are going to withdraw again. I probably should rest, get rid of those shaken markers. Meanwhile, Napoleon's giving orders to Oudinot to, I'm sorry, not to Oudinot, to Bessier, to push up. He's got Oudinot connected with, attached to him, and I'm going to just try to roll this whole flank with the weight of this, with the weight of the guards thrown in. That's a lot more effective than any kind of frontal attack. And then if they turn and try to react to the flanking maneuver, maybe I bring things in. But everything else is pretty damn beaten up. If we take a look, First Corps has one good division there, not counting Cav. Cav's okay. Davout's in okay shape. Fourth Corps, okay, Saint Hilaire and Vendôme, yeah, they might recover their units, but they're never going to be in a position to attack. So they're going to be kind of at the linchpin of the attack, and that means they're the unit that I would want to cut in and start supporting the flanking, maneuver, but they're in no position to do so. First Corps might be able to. Again, I've got one good division there. This other division, sure, it's got one unwrecked unit, but, it can't fight. If it fights, it'll end up wrecked. We go down to 5th Corps. We see we got Caffarelli's beaten up. Suchet, he's got a couple of units that maybe have an attack left in him. And Oudinot is going to be attached to the guards with his grenadier division. The Cav is fine, but the right column for the Russians is relatively untouched, so I don't really want to launch an attack there, and I don't want to leave anything ready to be attacked. I might be able to dispatch 5th Corps up across the front. Of course, there's artillery all over there. In terms of artillery ammo, that has gotten way low. The French are down to 30. The Russian, or the coalition, at 47. Just so much massive artillery fire is going on. Now, if I do launch an attack, I don't really need my artillery for the attack. They're good for a follow-up to the attack. If you're trying to take territory, you put them behind the line, unlimber them if you can, and if the line kind of wavers or breaks, it may well fall back onto the artillery. You could even have the artillery one hex away if you close combat, to give them a chance to set up. But the artillery moves slowly, and especially on hills, and that means that it's going to take a couple extra turns to get there if the artillery is involved in the attack, and I'm planning on using it in that kind of offensive manner. So it's not really a great option. The Cav, the horse artillery, is okay. All right, this is probably it for today. I think I'm going to have a drink, and I don't know. My sleeping schedule is so screwed up that who knows what the fuck is involved in it. But I am prepping something else. 4 in the morning. I slept for a reasonable amount of time. I don't know how long, maybe on almost a whole night, but I want to get a little bit more sleep if I can before my dealings. However, I decided to slip up here after I woke up and play out at least half a turn. And I played the coalition turn out, I think. It's hard to remember because there's so many things that need to recover, but I think I've got everything dealt with. Artillery fire continuing to press. No more guns went, no more losses. It was basically a wash there. Langeron pulled back, and again, this is where I think Langeron's commander was here. I just don't feel like it's fair to put things on this. Hey, you can't complete, build a line or whatever. But maybe it is whatever. But I gave him a chance to build his line there. He's still not under defend order, so his cannon can't be used. The French are probably going to take a breather before they launch another attack, given that there is actually a line there. Give the GD4 or whatever it is, the D4 something, 3-4. There's so many units with letters in them and stuff. A chance to catch up and position itself on the flank and undermine the position enough that maybe it just withdraws on its own without having to make an attack. But again, casualties are the only thing that matters in this game. And the Russians are getting some pretty good recovery rates, or the coalition, well, the Russians mainly. The coalition, Kolarath here is not doing a good job. But, yeah, and so it's like, well, even if we are attacked, we're going to be in pretty good shape comparatively to where we were. Which is a little weird because their leadership and morale is a little less in general than, well, their morale is a little less, their leadership's a lot less than what the French have. But this is kind of key. You don't have to be a particularly good leader to bonus the morale checks by just as much as having Napoleon present. Now, under the old system, the rating of the leader was what mattered. Now, well, as long as you got a 2-rated leader, including fighter capabilities, you rally just fine. Well, you rally as well as you possibly can. When I say rally, that's true too, but I was actually talking about recovering stragglers. A little bit more sleep and then ended up waking up when light came. That's cool. That gave me time to slip another turn, and I'm going to try to do a little bit of yard work while it's still cool as well. So we have Legrand beginning to move up here. The Cav did a countercharge, prevented things from getting too bad by making something go into a square. But with Davout and Legrand moving up like this, it doesn't look too positive on that flank. Orders went to Bessier and Oudinot, because I'm attaching him, whether that's legal or not. They've been operating that way since the beginning. Like, that's how they were set up. And Napoleon's dropping back here. He's going to send some orders to Davout for a more aggressive attack. Davout just wanted to take Pratzen Heights. Figured, hey, he's pretty good at initiative, but he's not that good, you know. Like, there's not that much time left. It might take 3 or 4 turns for an initiative to get there. I'd rather get an assured order out there. And First Corps is beginning to look rallied enough that I may just send them up in support of this attack as well. I'm beginning to have thoughts of the Russians, if this gets denuded here, launching an attack against the French left, though. Like if Fifth Corps picks up and goes, I'm going to probably send the right in. So there's still a battle happening, it seems. At least for now, we'll see, you know. Davout has not been shattered, and that's kind of the key to the whole thing. If he gets really, if his attack is stopped, is essentially what it comes down to. Because we take a look, and he's got two units that can make an assault still. The problem, of course, is that L-Man, I don't remember who he is, Lingard, is he's got a pretty damn big column there. Personal life crap again. My interview or whatever the fuck it was by video didn't work because, little did I know, my wife's machine did not have speakers. And by the time I got headphones working, the person I was supposed to deal with had quit. At least I think I got headphones working. I mean, I couldn't tell because I didn't have somebody to converse with. So I'm looking at the map. You're looking at the map if you're watching. And something came to mind. You know, one of the big things against the old defensive orders was units have to be able to defend. Under the new system, and this included units with no orders, whatever. Under the new system, when you get repulsed but with no orders, if you don't find orders, you can't defend. You can't fire your artillery, okay, you know, except on opportunity fire, that helps. You can't launch counterattacks. You can't do shit. They've designed the game, the new set of rules in such a way that it really blows away the whole argument. And I never really believed in that argument. So I'm not terribly upset by this. But what it means is that units that are pressed that have collapsed, or units that stopped and can't figure out how to get orders, and it's hard to get new orders, really can't hold ground. I mean, they can't get thrown out easily, but the French positioning themselves with their skirmishers are going to be an obnoxious thing. I can't stand here or else I'm going to be taking, you know, fire that's about, well, it's not as effective as artillery that was placed in that range, but it's much more effective than artillery plinking that's going on. Because there's so many skirmishers on that one unit that it's going to take losses no matter what. Anyway, that's a weird sort of thing I've got to figure out. I think I have to do an emergency corps withdrawal if I can't if I can't come up with some orders. Now, I could hold off a little bit, but the French are just going to, they don't have to actually run into me. And they may choose not to. They may choose just to use their skirmisher advantage to force me out of the thing. Now, if I had defensive orders, I would have to, in order to react to what the French are presumably going to do, I would have to charge them. Which, you know, it's the only way to defend in this system. Rain was irrelevant. No reason not to. Wow, lots of negatives in there. Fall back. Yeah, stragglers, but and 1L2. Oh shit! I should have been checking for orders. This is such a pain in the ass here. Yeah, I had 2 sets of orders. Oops. I gotta figure out if I screwed up, because otherwise I should be going without taking stragglers back towards gross hostile DAC, which is where I want to go. I'm sure what are the chances? 2 receivers command, aid written, general, no order 3. Oh, geez. Okay, well, we accepted those orders right away, which means I took no stragglers, and I'm heading back. Of course, the French can keep pushing against me. Oh, well. Next turn, orders arrive for me to defend Pratzen, which may just mean I swing around. Unlikely. I have to make a roll like that for it to work, but yeah. And I don't know what I took in stragglers. It couldn't have been many. I'm going to say I didn't take any. I think I may have taken one, but screw it. Already, the artillery fire generates less stragglers under this system than I think the old system did. Just because you have to really get high on the fire chart to cause stragglers. And on the old system, artillery caused stragglers before it started causing hits. You might make an argument to say, well, wait a minute, why would people be straggling from artillery fire? It's not like you're moving around and shooting and whatnot. Well, both types of fire cause stragglers, and the idea of that is it could be men cowering, it could be separation, whatever, but artillery fire should be, if anything is going to make people cower, in terms of like try to find cover or something, it's artillery fire that might do that. And I think that's the argument for that. The argument against it is that these units weren't, like a modern infantry company. They're not going to split up and, dodge around. The skirmishers might, but for the most part, they were to stand in formation. So if you're standing in a line like this, what does stragglers mean? Does it mean partial routes? And that's pretty unlikely. So if they're taking that view of it, I think it works here. If they're taking the other view, yeah, I think they're probably, I think the original game probably was taking more of the Civil War, which they just lifted and put in here, put into the system on the original. They're taking more of the Civil War concept where, yeah, you still have formations and whatnot, but they're not as rigid and well drilled in general. And they were more able to take certain initiatives, like take cover or whatever. So I think it's not an unreasonable choice to switch it. It's just different. Okay, things are starting up again. And I'm in pure avoidance mode now. Which means I play this and I play my baseball game and I go dancing tonight and I forget everything. Which makes everybody else happier, I'm sure. So Napoleon fired off some additional orders to Davout to continue his attack. Those aren't arrived yet. The Guard and Grenadiers have gotten their order, have accepted their orders and started moving forward. We've got a bunch of attacks on the rear of, P-Man, I think. Yeah, with way too many consonants in that. I mean, let's see, there's a Y. There's 2 Ys and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 consonants. Now, I'm not going to speak because the Poles use a Latin alphabet, and this may just be how it's written in a Polish writing, but Russian, you shouldn't ever, like if this name was in Russian, you shouldn't translate it to some sort of, I don't know, pseudo-Polish, but that's clearly a Slavic name. It's probably a Polish name. But yeah, they just use their letters totally differently. And let's see, on the advance, coming to here, you see a couple of squares. There were a couple of cav attacks, that one of which actually got battered a little bit, repulsed. The other one broke away in time to not take any losses. But yeah, it's, you know, it's so easy to hurt cav when they charge infantry, but I needed to do it or else blow the cav away. So, and if I ran away, there were potentials for these two units, but not this one. It had used up too many movement points without doing a forced march to make it into contact. I'm sorry, I've got some gassy hiccups or something. Now, I got an opportunity fire against this unit because it moved into range for that, but these guys are not going to get fire other than opportunity fire. So, you know, they kind of have to hold it for close combat if they're worried about that. Let's see what else. Napoleon himself is not ready to commit the First Corps, which will be his next commit, until this sort of breaks. Then I'll go talk to them. So he's rallying some forces, and I guess that's about it. But it's going to be an intense little half turn, and then I go play a season of baseball and go back to sleep probably. Hey, look, it's daylight. Mostly attacking downhill, all in the rear. I only won one of the 3 battles. The other 2 were shootouts, which meant approximately equal losses across the board. And in fact, actual losses, this was approximately equal as well here, where I got to break through. But I caused a huge amount of stragglers, which of course, you know, this is the thing that happened on the first day, right? Maybe I battered some units in terms of stragglers, but they recovered a lot of them over the night. Of course, that happened in both directions. I think the French got the worst of that attack overall. And Friant's division is pretty much used up at this point. Langeron's column, he's still got a couple of units that are fresh, just because he's such a big column. And he's actually not even a wrecked column yet. Friant's division is wrecked. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that Davout will stop, because Legrand has been attached to him, so that gives him a little bit more weight to his unit. So it has more, and he's such a good leader, it has more of a possibility of continuing the attack. But those units of Friant's, I don't really want to throw into the battle, although one of them's not wrecked yet. It's close to the line. But, you know, it was just too much not to slam into the ass of those Russians. But, yeah, it didn't really do anything. Now, I forgot to fire all the artillery back here, so I gotta do the Russian artillery there. The numbers are getting really low, so the French are down to 17 shots left. The Russians at 30. They'll probably be around 23 or so after this. Sleep eludes me. I got up stupid early, but I was hoping to fall back asleep in the morning. Turns out I'm probably gonna try to get an hour or 2 nap at some point. Langeron pulling back, the Cav forming up a defense somewhere else. And again, I'm being loose on the bolting down because that would have been forced to form its defense here otherwise. The center core, well, Kolarath still hasn't revealed that he doesn't understand he's supposed to defend himself against the French army that's coming here. Maybe only Milodorovich got the orders, and he accepted his and moved into place. Nothing else new. And artillery fire getting down, 20 for the coalition left, only 13 left for the French. We're going to actually run out somewhere around here. So, for whatever it's worth, I mean, we're just plinking guns at each other. When they'd run out, it just gives a column shift against them, is what I've decided. So it's not like the guns become completely ineffectual and I'm unable to fire like they did in games like Terrible Swift Sword. The CWB series always has like a penalty for being low on ammo. And it allows you to fire the guns at a lower ammo rating, which maybe actually would make sense to do. Nah, because I want to cause a casualty, and you can't cause casualties at less than 1. When I do run out, it'll mean all this fire I can just kind of leave alone unless somebody's doing something. I'm trying to break away from my hiding from everything a little bit. Not doing a great job of it, but at least I could step in and force myself to play a turn of this. Davout's command continued its assault. Nothing else was changing. I decided to move up and get my skirmishers up against those guns since the cannons can't fire. They fired opportunity fire, but they can't fire during normal fire. So if I just sit there and plink them, I'll destroy them, and that will make life easier. Well, I haven't figured out what these guys are up to. I kind of don't want to run in front of the guns. Not yet. I was moving the Friant division into place and realized, hey, there's a danger that I'm going to be cav charged. So I moved a cav up with Davout to countercharge. Cav charged, I countercharged. The cav switched its target so that it gets first strike. The Liechtenstein's cav slams in. It's a shootout because they're both good enough. Cav versus cav usually turns out you have expected results from it, unlike when cav and infantry intermingle, where the morale checks are shaky at best. But here, you know, neither side could really fail. I think the French could fail on a 1, which would have been huge. But the result is almost or is probably worse than a failure would normally be. Heavy casualties for the French in the shootout. Just bad die roll combination at the end. And the worst thing of all, it wrecked the Cav squadron, and Davout is dead. Yeah. Well, wounded so badly he can't fight. But boy, that's gonna bring things to a halt. You know, he's got no leaders left on his wing or in his corps. So yeah, it's looking really, really unlikely that this attack will keep happening. And I think that will be it when that happens. Unfortunately, I don't feel like I would be following orders if I held back with those units completely. So charged in here and tightened up the line here. Took a lot of artillery fire. If I'm going to take that much, maybe I should have just charged right in and faced them head on. But I did unlimber some horse artillery here that'll allow me to start plinking away at that stuff in a way that it can't shoot at me. So again, the same kind of concept using the skirmishers here. These guys are under orders so they can fire their artillery. The Austrians are not under orders, so they're like, well, they're shooting at us, but that's okay. There's something really screwy with that. And that's new system only. I did forget to fire off all my French artillery that's trying to plink here, so I'll go back and do that. In terms of life, oh shit, man. Yesterday, it's Sunday. I gotta go shopping today. I also have to do stuff to prepare for next week to try to make up for the fiasco of Friday. No, Thursday. But then I also had my pair of glasses. I badly damaged them while dancing and lost a screw, but that's not the only thing. The frame is a little bent too, which is probably how the screw came out. And that's okay in a sense, because now I'm wearing, like, those were not my newest glasses, but they were my everyday glasses. Now I'm wearing the newer ones that I only used for, so far, the only time I've used them is for Leipzig, actually, because I couldn't read the counters without them. They've got a little stronger reading element to them. But these other ones were almost exactly the same prescription, just a tiny bit off on the reading glasses side. And, you know, it really sucks. But eventually things break and whatnot. I can't come to terms with that. But, now I'm going to have to go dancing in glasses that, you know, aren't very good, which is okay. But the big problem is I won't be able to read while I'm out, which I usually show up and read for like an hour or two. You know, just like I pick up the local rag and read that for, it takes less than an hour, but it gives me a little bit of time to just be able to hang out at the bar outside without dancing and whatnot, putting some beers down and whatnot. Oh well, I'm midway through this turn. We have one assault still to take place, and I've got the firepower exchange. Artillery ammos are about equal now, what with all the free opportunity fires I gave them. So that's the end of the line for this French turn. I mean, we're not going to get too much time back. Most of the day is going to be spent fighting, but yeah, I just don't see how the French can keep up and can launch another attack. They've really eaten a lot of lead in this one. We got casualty rates up here, 110 to 122 for the French. And the armies got spent on each other. And really, it comes down to if the coalition has to attack piecemeal, and they're going to, if an army has to attack piecemeal in this, that's about the only way that you're going to get, you know, this kind of butchery that that happened in the historical Austerlitz, where the French were able to just, you know, work wonders on the coalition line. So making that attack up here turns out to be a mistake. Now, I don't think it would have been under the old system. Under the old system, I think it would have been a real pain in the ass to the coalition. But the biggest pain it really is it pushes you towards the edge of the map and, like, makes it harder for you to keep your forces in command. So rather than falling back and saying, okay, well, you want that high ground you left? Fine, go ahead. You know, without some sort of rules to force the coalition to attack, I think this is not a particularly advantageous situation for the French. If they just position themselves up on the heights and say, hey, hi. And the victory conditions allow that. The only thing that doesn't allow that is the scenario beginning orders. Scenario beginning orders for the new version set up so that the coalition has to attack. And I think that's really the biggest advantage. Like, I always saw hey, I want to play the 2-day one, give myself more flexibility, etc. Yeah, but more flexibility in this circumstance means the coalition's not going to do the stupid orders that they did. Now, I tried to write orders that are just as stupid. All right. Yeah, one of the things that's so I like to hide from everything that I can't, things I can't face, I hide from. And there's a lot of things I can't face right now, including my glasses and a whole bunch of other things. And yeah, so I found myself another stupid browser game type thing and spent most of last night doing it. And honestly, I've got to make sure that I don't get so hooked on that I can't go shopping and can't do the other things I need to do today. But that's the reason that I'm hooked on it, right? That's the reason that I pulled it down and played around with it. Actually, it's because a video I was watching gave me some free stuff on it. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to start, I might as well, start with lots of bonuses. But yeah, it is a dangerous thing for me to do anything like that. Of course, I'd probably be playing my baseball game. I played a few seasons yesterday, 2 or 3, I'm not sure.